Dog leads rescuers to a hidden cave. What they found inside left everyone in tear. It started with a single bark echoing through the dense forest. The sound was sharp and urgent, cutting through the crisp morning air like a cry for help. For hikers familiar with the sprawling Pine Ridge Reserve, it was not unusual to hear wildlife stirring in the early hours. But this bark was different. It carried a desperation that was impossible to ignore. A group of conservation volunteers had gathered near the trailhead that morning, preparing for their routine patrol. Among them was Emily, a seasoned wildlife photographer known for her unshakable calm and keen intuition. She paused mid-conversation, her hand tightening on her camera strap as the sound echoed again. "That doesn't sound like a wild animal," she said, her brow furrowing. One of the volunteers, a young man named Raj, nodded in agreement. "It's a dog, and it sounds like it's in trouble." Without hesitation, Emily adjusted her pack and gestured toward the direction of the sound. "Let's check it out. It might need help." The group set off, their boots crunching against the forest floor as they followed the sound. The barking grew louder, more insistent, guiding them deeper into the woods. It wasn't long before they spotted the source. A scruffy, mud-covered dog standing at the edge of a narrow ravine. The dog was a mix of breeds, its matted fur and gaunt frame suggesting it had been on its own for some time. Its eyes, however, were bright and focused, filled with a determination that sent a chill down Emily's spine. The dog barked again, turning to look at the group as if urging them to follow. "He's trying to show us something," Emily said, her voice filled with certainty. The dog didn't wait. It darted along the ravine's edge, pausing every few steps to look back and ensure the humans were following. The group exchanged glances before hurrying after it, their curiosity and concern mounting with every step. The terrain grew more challenging as they descended into the ravine, the air growing cooler and damp with the scent of moss and earth. The dog led them to a narrow opening in the rock face, barely visible beneath a tangle of vines and overgrowth. It barked once, then sat down, its gaze fixed on Emily. "This is it," she said, crouching to inspect the opening. "There's something in there." Raj peered into the darkness, his flashlight casting long, eerie shadows on the walls of the narrow passage. "Do you think it's another animal? Maybe the dog's pack?" Emily shook her head. "I don't know. But whatever it is, he's not leaving until we find it." With a deep breath, Emily squeezed through the opening, her flashlight illuminating the jagged walls of the cave. The air was thick and cool, carrying a faint, musty odor. The sound of dripping water echoed faintly in the distance, and the walls glistened with moisture. The dog followed close behind, its steps quick and purposeful. The rest of the group hesitated at the entrance, unsure of whether to follow, but Emily's voice called back to them. "Bring ropes and supplies. We might need them." The passage widened into a small chamber, and Emily froze as her flashlight beam swept across the floor. There, huddled against the far wall, was a bundle of tattered blankets. At first, she thought it was debris left behind by previous explorers, but then the blankets shifted. Emily's heart leapt into her throat. "There's someone here," she called, her voice echoing through the cave. She rushed forward, her flashlight revealing the gaunt, pale face of a child no older than 8. The boy's eyes fluttered open, his expression dazed and weak. He clung to the blankets as if they were his only source of warmth, his lips trembling as he tried to speak. The dog let out a soft whine, stepping closer and licking the boy's hand. The boy's eyes focused on the dog, a flicker of recognition crossing his face. Emily knelt beside him, her voice gentle but urgent. "It's okay," she said. "We're here to help. You're safe now." The boy's voice was barely above a whisper. "Ranger." Emily's chest tightened. "A park ranger? Is that who you were with?" The boy nodded weakly, his eyes brimming with tears. He told me to wait here, said he'd come back." Emily's stomach dropped as the implications of his words sank in. She turned to the dog, who was now sitting protectively beside the boy, its eyes filled with an intelligence that seemed almost human. "Did you bring us here to help him?" she asked softly. The dog tilted its head, letting out a low bark as if to say yes. By this time, the rest of the group had reached the chamber, their gasps echoing as they took in the scene. Raj hurried forward, wrapping a thermal blanket around the boy and checking his vitals. "He's hypothermic," he said, his voice tight. "We need to get him out of here immediately." Emily nodded, her mind racing. "What about the ranger? If he's out there, he could be in trouble too." The boy's voice trembled as he spoke again. He said he'd come back for me, but it's been so long. Emily placed a reassuring hand on the boy's shoulder. "We'll find him," she promised. "But first, let's get you somewhere safe." The group worked quickly, securing the boy to a makeshift stretcher and preparing to climb back up the ravine. The dog stayed close, its unwavering focus on the boy as they made their way out of the cave. When they finally reached the forest floor, Emily turned to the dog, her voice filled with quiet determination. "Show us where he went, please." The dog barked once, its body tense with urgency, before taking off into the woods. Emily and the group followed without hesitation, their flashlights cutting through the gathering darkness. They didn't know what they would find, but one thing was certain: the dog wasn't leading them astray. The dog moved with purpose, weaving through the trees with an agility that belied its scruffy appearance. Emily and the group followed close behind, their flashlights bouncing off the dense foliage. The forest grew darker as the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows that danced across the ground. "Where is it taking us?" Raj asked, his breath coming in quick bursts as he tried to keep up. "I don't know," Emily replied, her voice tight with determination. "But I trust it. There's something out here. Something it wants us to find." The dog led them to a steep incline, its paws skittering over loose stones as it climbed. The volunteers hesitated, exchanging nervous glances, but Emily pushed forward, her heart pounding. The urgency in the dog's movements was impossible to ignore. When they reached the top of the incline, the dog paused, its ears perked as it scanned the area. Then it barked sharply, darting toward a cluster of bushes at the edge of a clearing. Emily followed, her flashlight cutting through the shadows. Her breath caught as the beam illuminated a figure lying motionless on the ground. It was a man, his uniform unmistakable even in the dim light. A park ranger, his vest covered in dirt and his face pale. Emily dropped to her knees beside him, her hands shaking as she checked for a pulse. "He's alive," she called, relief flooding her voice. "But he's weak. We need to get him out of here." Raj and another volunteer rushed to her side, their faces grim as they assessed the ranger's condition. His breathing was shallow, his lips dry and cracked. Emily reached for her water bottle, carefully pouring a small amount into his mouth. The ranger stirred, his eyelids fluttering open. His gaze was unfocused at first, but then his eyes locked on the dog standing beside Emily. A faint smile tugged at the corners of his lips. "Good boy," he murmured, his voice barely audible. Emily leaned closer. "Can you tell us what happened? How long have you been out here?" The ranger's brow furrowed as he struggled to speak. "The boy, he was lost. I found him, brought him to the cave. Told him to wait while I went for help. But I didn't make it back." Emily's chest tightened as she pieced together the story. The ranger had tried to save the boy, only to collapse before he could return. And the dog, this incredible, loyal creature, had taken it upon itself to lead rescuers to them both. "You saved him," Emily said softly, her voice filled with admiration. "Because of you, we found him." The ranger's eyes flickered closed, exhaustion overtaking him. Emily turned to the volunteers. "We need to move him now. Raj, bring the stretcher." The group worked quickly, securing the ranger and preparing to carry him back to the trailhead. The dog stayed close, its watchful eyes darting between the ranger and the rescuers as if ensuring they were doing everything right. The journey back was grueling. The incline that had seemed manageable on the way up now felt impossibly steep, and the weight of the stretcher slowed their progress. But the dog's presence kept them going, its quiet determination a constant source of encouragement. When they finally emerged from the forest, The sight of emergency vehicles waiting near the trailhead brought a wave of relief. Paramedics rushed forward, taking over as the group explained what had happened. The boy and the ranger were loaded into ambulances, their condition stable but critical. Emily knelt beside the dog, her hand resting on its head. "You did it," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "You saved them both." The dog wagged its tail, its eyes shining with an intelligence that seemed almost otherworldly. It leaned into Emily's touch, its body relaxing for the first time since they had found it. In the days that followed, news of the rescue spread quickly. The story of the brave dog who had led rescuers to a hidden cave captured the hearts of people far beyond the small community surrounding Pine Ridge Reserve. Reporters flocked to the area, eager to learn more about the heroic animal and the lives it had saved. The boy, whose name was Lucas, made a full recovery. He was shy around the cameras and reporters, but his gratitude for the dog was unmistakable. "He stayed with me the whole time," Lucas told Emily one day as they sat together outside the hospital. "He didn't leave, not even when it got cold. He kept me safe." The ranger, whose name was Tom, also recovered, though his injuries had been more severe. When Emily visited him in the hospital, he smiled weakly and said, "That dog, he's the real hero. I don't know where he came from, but I owe him my life." Emily couldn't argue with that. The dog's actions had been nothing short of extraordinary, and yet there was still so much they didn't know about him. Where had he come from? How had he known to lead them to the cave? As she sat beside Tom's hospital bed, the dog curled at her feet. Emily made a silent promise to uncover the truth. Whatever the dog's story was, it deserved to be told. Emily couldn't stop thinking about the dog. While the boy and the ranger recovered, the dog stayed by Emily's side, as if sensing her need to understand its story. Wherever she went, whether visiting Lucas in the hospital or checking in on Ranger Tom, the dog followed faithfully, its quiet presence a constant source of comfort. The local community quickly rallied around the animal, dubbing it Hero, but to Emily, the dog's story was far from over. She had seen something in Hero's eyes that spoke of a past filled with both pain and resilience. She needed to know where this incredible creature had come from. One afternoon, Emily decided to visit the Pine Ridge Animal Shelter, hoping they might have information on stray dogs in the area. She arrived with Hero at her side, the dog walking calmly on the leash she had fashioned for him. The shelter director, a kind woman named Clara, greeted her warmly. "Everyone's been talking about this brave pup," Clara said, crouching to stroke Hero's head. "He's a hero in every sense of the word." Emily smiled, though her curiosity remained sharp. "He is, but I can't stop wondering, where did he come from? Does anyone recognize him?" Clara frowned thoughtfully. "We've had reports of a few stray dogs in the area, but nothing that matches his description. Let me check our records." Clara disappeared into the back office while Emily waited, her fingers idly running through Hero's fur. The dog leaned into her touch, its calm demeanor making her wonder just how long it had been wandering the forest alone. When Clara returned, she carried a folder and a thoughtful expression. "We had a report about a dog fitting Hero's description a few months ago. A family driving through the area stopped to help when they saw him on the side of the road. They gave him water and tried to get him into their car, but he ran off into the woods. They left a note saying he seemed skittish but not aggressive." Emily's brow furrowed. "Do we know anything else? Was he abandoned? Lost?" Clara sighed. "It's hard to say. If he's been living in the wild for a while, it's possible he was abandoned or separated from his owner. But there's something unique about him, isn't there? He doesn't act like a typical stray." Emily nodded, her mind racing. "I think he was waiting for something, or someone, maybe even protecting something." Clara tilted her head, considering Emily's words. "Dogs like Hero are rare. They bond deeply even after loss. Whatever his past, he hasn't let it define him. He's still giving everything he has to help others." That evening, Emily sat on her porch with Hero curled at her feet. The sunset painted the horizon in hues of gold and pink, and the sounds of the forest began to lull the world into stillness. Emily leaned down, resting her hand on Hero's head. "Who were you waiting for, hero?" she asked softly. "Was it Lucas? Tom? Or someone else?" Hero lifted his head, his amber eyes meeting hers. There was a depth in his gaze that sent a shiver down Emily's spine, a silent answer she couldn't quite decipher. A few days later, the mystery deepened. While reviewing photographs she had taken during her hikes, Emily came across an image that made her pause. It was from months ago, long before the rescue, showing the same cave Hero had led them to. In the foreground, a faint silhouette stood near the entrance. A dog. Hero. Emily's heart raced. Could Hero have been watching the cave all this time? But why? She printed the photo and brought it to Ranger Tom, who was now recovering at home. When she showed him the image, his expression grew serious. "That cave," he began, his voice trailing off as he stared at the picture. "There was a report about it years ago. A hiker went missing nearby, but they never found him. The search was called off when the trail went cold." Emily's breath caught. "Do you think Hero was connected to that? Could he have been with the hiker?" Tom shrugged, his face a mix of curiosity and concern. "It's possible. Dogs have been known to stay near places tied to their owners, even long after they're gone. It's their way of holding onto the bond." Emily stared at Hero, who lay at her feet, his ears twitching at the sound of their voices. If Tom's theory was correct, Hero's story was far more heartbreaking than she had imagined. Determined to uncover the truth, Emily delved into local archives and records. She found an old article about the missing hiker, a man named David Reese, who had disappeared while exploring Pine Ridge Reserve. The article mentioned that David had been traveling with his dog, a shepherd mix named Max. Emily's hands trembled as she compared the description of Max to Hero. The resemblance was uncanny. Same coat, same eyes, same demeanor. Could it really be him? She contacted David's family, explaining her discovery with care. His sister, a woman named Laura, agreed to meet Emily at the reserve. When she arrived, her eyes immediately filled with tears at the sight of Hero. "It's him," Laura said, her voice breaking. "That's Max. That's David's dog." Emily's chest tightened as Laura knelt to embrace Hero, who wagged his tail and licked her face. The reunion was bittersweet, filled with joy for finding Max alive, but also with the pain of knowing David was still gone. "Max must have stayed near the cave, hoping David would come back," Laura said through her tears. "He never gave up." Emily's heart swelled with admiration for the dog who had spent years waiting and watching, his loyalty unshaken by time or loss. She promised Laura that Max's story would not be forgotten. The discovery of Max's identity sent ripples through the community. Emily felt a mix of awe and heartbreak as she pieced together his story. A dog who had lost his owner but never abandoned the place where they had been separated. Max's loyalty had not only led to the rescue of Lucas and Ranger Tom, but had also brought closure to a mystery that had lingered for years. As Laura shared more about her brother David, the picture of Max's devotion became even clearer. David had been an avid hiker and animal lover, someone who had found solace in nature and joy in his bond with Max. According to Laura, David had adopted Max as a puppy from a shelter, and the two had been inseparable ever since. David always said Max had a sixth sense, Laura told Emily one afternoon as they sat by the trailhead. He wasn't just a pet, he was a protector. David used to joke that Max would save his life one day. Emily smiled softly, stroking Max's fur as he lay at her feet. "He's done more than that," she said. "He's saved more lives than we can count." Laura nodded, her eyes glistening with tears. "I just wish David could see this. He would be so proud of him." In the days that followed, Emily and Laura worked together to ensure Max's story would be remembered. They reached out to local news outlets, sharing the tale of the dog who had waited years by the cave where he had last seen his owner. The response was overwhelming. Messages poured in from across the country, words of admiration, gratitude, and support for the incredible dog whose loyalty had touched so many lives. But as much as the attention celebrated Max's heroism, Emily couldn't help but feel that there was still something missing. Max had given so much of himself, and now she wanted to ensure he had the life he deserved. One crisp autumn morning, Emily and Laura decided to return to the cave with Max. They wanted to honor David's memory and allow Max to visit the place he had guarded so faithfully. The three of them hiked through the forest in silence, the air filled with the rustling of leaves and the distant calls of birds. When they reached the cave, Max hesitated at the entrance. His ears twitched, and his amber eyes scanned the familiar surroundings. Emily crouched beside him, her hand resting on his back. "It's okay," she said softly. "You don't have to wait anymore." Max stepped forward, his movements slow and deliberate. He sniffed the ground, his nose brushing against the rocks and earth as if searching for traces of the past. Laura knelt nearby, placing a small framed photo of David at the cave's entrance. She whispered a quiet prayer, her voice trembling with emotion. As they sat together, a sense of peace settled over the group. Emily felt the weight of Max's journey, the years of waiting and watching, and the incredible strength it must have taken to never give up. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small plaque she had made, its inscription simple but powerful. "In honor of Max, the loyal guardian," a testament to love, courage, and unwavering faith. Together, they placed the plaque at the cave's entrance, ensuring that Max's story and David's memory would be preserved for generations to come. In the weeks that followed, Max's life changed in ways he could never have imagined. He moved into Laura's home, where he was surrounded by love, warmth, and the comforts he had gone without for so long. Emily visited often, bringing treats and toys, and taking Max on hikes through the trails he had once roamed alone. The boy, Lucas, and Ranger Tom also became part of Max's extended family. They would visit Laura's home, sharing stories and laughter while Max lay contentedly at their feet. The bond they all shared, formed through a rescue that had changed their lives, was unbreakable. Max's story continued to inspire people far and wide. Emily, with Laura's blessing, wrote an article about the dog's journey, detailing his loyalty, bravery, and the lives he had saved. The story became a sensation, sparking donations to local shelters and encouraging countless adoptions. Max had not only touched the lives of those who had met him, but also countless others who had heard his story. One evening, as Emily sat on Laura's porch with Max at her side, she looked out at the fading light and felt a sense of profound gratitude. Max's journey had been filled with hardship, but it had also been a testament to the enduring power of love. "You've done so much, Max," she said, her voice soft. "More than anyone could have ever asked of you. And now it's your turn to be taken care of." Max wagged his tail, leaning into her touch. For the first time in years, he seemed completely at ease, his eyes filled not with longing but with contentment. As the stars appeared in the night sky, Emily leaned back in her chair, her heart full. Max's story wasn't just one of survival. It was a reminder that even in the face of loss, love could endure, heal, and inspire. And as she sat there, listening to the quiet sounds of the night, she knew that Max's legacy would live on. In the lives he had touched, the hearts he had healed, and the world he had made just a little brighter. As the months passed, Max's life grew richer with love and care. Laura devoted herself to ensuring he experienced the warmth of family again, taking him on long walks through meadows and cooking his meals with a tenderness that spoke of gratitude. Emily, always nearby, chronicled the moments of joy that defined Max's new chapter. From playful romps in the yard to quiet nights by the fire, every moment was a testament to his resilience and the bond that had brought them all together. One day, as Emily sorted through old photos of Max's journey, an idea began to form. She remembered the overwhelming response to his story and the countless messages from people inspired by his loyalty and bravery. Max's story had the power to create real change, not just for him, but for animals like him who needed a second chance. She approached Laura with her idea that evening, her excitement palpable. "I want to start a foundation," she said, holding up a photo of Max standing proudly by the cave. "In his name, to help stray and abandoned animals find homes, to honor their stories, and to support the people who save them." Laura's eyes softened as she looked at the photo. "Max would love that," she said. "It's exactly what he deserves." Together, they launched the Max Foundation for Animal Rescue. The The foundation quickly gained traction, its mission resonating with people across the country. Donations poured in, and the funds were used to support shelters, organize adoption events, and provide medical care for animals in need. The foundation also worked to educate communities about the importance of compassion and the incredible bonds that could be formed with animals. Max became the face of the foundation, his story reaching even more people than Emily had imagined. Photos of him, both from his days in the wild and his new life with Laura, graced posters, websites, and social media campaigns. But for Max, the spotlight never changed him. He remained the same loyal, gentle soul who had waited years by the cave, his quiet strength a source of inspiration for everyone around him. 1 year after the rescue, Laura and Emily organized a special event at Pine Ridge Reserve. It was a gathering to honor Max, the lives he had saved, and the legacy he had created. The community came together, filling the trails with laughter, warmth, and stories of the dog who had touched them all. The event began with a hike to the cave, where the plaque still stood as a reminder of Max's loyalty and love. Emily led the way, with Max walking proudly by her side. When they reached the cave, the group paused for a moment of reflection, their voices hushed as they took in the significance of the place. Lucas, now vibrant and full of life, stepped forward to place a bouquet of wildflowers at the cave's entrance. "Thank you, Max," he said softly, his voice carrying across the crowd, "for saving me, for saving all of us." Ranger Tom, standing nearby, added, "You reminded us all of what it means to never give up. You're a true hero, Mac." As the crowd clapped and cheered, Max wagged his tail, his eyes shining with contentment. Emily knelt beside him, resting her hand on his back. "You've done so much," she whispered, "and now your story will keep helping others, just like you've always done." The group returned to the trailhead for a celebration filled with food, music, and shared memories. Max wandered through the crowd, receiving pets, hugs, and treats from people of all ages. It was a day filled with joy, gratitude, and the unshakable sense that Max's journey had brought everyone closer together. That evening, as the last of the guests departed, Emily and Laura sat on the porch with Max lying at their feet. The stars twinkled above, casting a soft glow over the quiet landscape. Emily looked down at Max, her heart swelling with love and pride. "You've changed the world. You know that?" she said, her voice soft. "Not just for Lucas or Tom, but for so many others. You're a miracle, Mac." Laura nodded, her hand resting gently on Max's head. "And we're so lucky to have him." As the night deepened, Max let out a contented sigh, his eyes closing as he drifted off to sleep. And in that moment, Emily felt an overwhelming sense of peace. Max's journey had come full circle, from a stray dog waiting by a cave to a beloved companion and a symbol of hope. His story would live on, inspiring countless others to believe in the power of love, loyalty, and the unbreakable bonds that connect us all. And though the stars shone brightly in the sky, it was Max's light that illuminated the lives of everyone who knew him, a light that would never fade. As the months passed, Max continued to thrive in his new home with Laura. His days were filled with warmth and love, his once weary eyes now bright and full of life. But something lingered in the background, a quiet restlessness that Emily and Laura couldn't ignore. Max often wandered to the edge of Laura's property, gazing out toward the forest with an expression that seemed to carry the weight of memories. One evening, as a storm rolled in, Max's behavior grew unusual. He paced by the door, his ears alert and his movements restless. The sound of thunder echoed in the distance, but it wasn't fear that drove his agitation. Emily, who had been visiting Laura, watched him closely. "Something's wrong," Emily said, her voice filled with concern. "He's trying to tell us something." Laura glanced out the window at the darkening sky. The storm was growing stronger, the wind howling through the trees. "Do you think it's the forest? Could he be sensing something?" Emily nodded. "It's possible. He's always had this way of knowing. We should check it out." Despite the worsening weather, the two women grabbed their jackets and flashlights. Max bolted out the door as soon as it opened, his paws splashing through the mud as he ran toward the treeline. Emily and Laura followed, their hearts pounding as the rain began to fall in heavy sheets. "Max, wait," Laura called, but the dog didn't slow. His focus was unshakable, his body moving with the same urgency he had shown on the day of the rescue. The forest was eerily quiet despite the storm, the usual sounds of wildlife muffled by the rain. Max led them deeper into the woods, his tail high and his ears pricked forward. Emily struggled to keep up, her flashlight cutting through the darkness as she stumbled over roots and rocks. Finally, Max stopped, his nose pressed to the ground as he sniffed furiously. Emily and Laura caught up, their breaths ragged as they looked around. They were near the old cave, the place where Max's journey had begun. But this time, something was different. The entrance to the cave was partially collapsed, rocks and debris blocking the passage. Max barked sharply, pawing at the ground near the entrance. Emily's chest tightened as she realized what he was trying to do. "There's someone inside," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the storm. "He's trying to help them." Without hesitation, Emily and Laura began moving the rocks, their hands scraping against the wet, jagged edges. The rain made the task even harder, the mud slick and unrelenting beneath their feet. Max worked alongside them, his powerful paws clawing at the dirt with relentless determination. "Who could be out here in this weather?" Laura asked, her voice strained as she heaved a large stone aside. "I don't know," Emily replied, her heart racing. "But Max wouldn't bring us here if it wasn't serious." After what felt like an eternity, they managed to clear a small opening. Emily shone her flashlight inside, her breath catching as she saw a figure huddled against the far wall. It was a young woman, her clothes soaked and her face pale. She looked up weakly, her eyes wide with fear and relief. "Help, please," she croaked, her voice barely audible. Emily wasted no time. "We're here," she called. "We're getting you out." Max barked again, his tail wagging as if to reassure the woman that she was safe. Emily and Laura reached through the opening, pulling her out carefully. The woman collapsed into their arms, her body trembling with cold and exhaustion. As they wrapped her in a thermal blanket and gave her sips of water, she began to explain through chattering teeth. I got lost. The storm came in so fast. I thought I wouldn't make it." "You're safe now," Laura said, her voice steady despite the storm raging around them. "Thanks to Mac." The woman's eyes drifted to the dog, her expression filled with gratitude. "He found me," she whispered. "I heard him barking. He wouldn't leave." Emily's throat tightened as she looked at Max, who stood proudly beside them, his body drenched but his eyes bright. Even now, after all he had been through, he hadn't stopped protecting those in need. The storm had passed by the time Emily, Laura, and the rescued woman reached the edge of the forest. Emergency services, alerted by Laura's call on the way back, were waiting with blankets and medical supplies. The woman was taken to an ambulance, her grateful eyes lingering on Max as she was helped inside. "He saved me," she said softly, her voice carrying through the quiet crowd. "If it weren't for him, I wouldn't be here." Max stood nearby, his wet fur glistening under the pale morning light. Despite his exhaustion, he held his head high, his tail wagging faintly as if he understood the significance of what had just happened. Emily knelt beside him, her hand resting on his back. "You've done it again, haven't you?" she said, her voice breaking with emotion. "You never stop." Laura joined her, wrapping an arm around Max. "You're incredible, boy. Truly one of a kind." As the ambulance pulled away, the small group of neighbors and responders gathered around Max, each offering words of admiration and thanks. The dog's quiet strength had touched them all, a living symbol of courage and loyalty. In the days that followed, the story of the storm rescue spread quickly, cementing Max's place as a local legend. People from neighboring towns came to meet the heroic dog, bringing treats and small tokens of appreciation. Max, ever humble, accepted their affection with gentle grace. But for Emily and Laura, Max was more than a hero, he was family. His presence had brought them closer, his unyielding loyalty a reminder of the power of love and connection. One evening, as the sun dipped low over the horizon, Emily and Laura sat together on the porch, watching Max as he dozed peacefully at their feet. The air was warm, carrying the scent of wildflowers, and the world seemed to hum with a quiet contentment. You know, Laura said, her voice thoughtful, Max has taught us so much. About resilience, about trust, about what it means to truly care. Emily nodded, her eyes drifting to the horizon. He's more than a dog. He's a guardian, a protector, and somehow he always knows when he's needed. Laura smiled, reaching down to scratch behind Max's ears. He's earned his peace now. No more storms, no more caves. Just love and rest. Max stirred at her touch, lifting his head to gaze at them with those soulful amber eyes. It was as if he understood every word, his tail thumping softly against the porch. Months later, a celebration was held at the Pine Ridge Reserve to honor Max's legacy. The event brought together everyone whose lives he had touched. Lucas, Ranger Tom, the young woman from the storm, and countless others who had been inspired by his story. A plaque was unveiled near the cave, its inscription reading, "In honor of Max, the guardian of the savannah, a hero who showed us the true meaning of loyalty, courage, and love." As the crowd applauded, Max sat proudly beside Emily and Laura, his eyes scanning the faces around him. He had come full circle, from a lonely dog waiting by a cave to a symbol of hope and unity. That night, as the world grew quiet, Emily sat with Max under the stars. She leaned down, wrapping her arms around him as her voice broke in a whisper. "Thank you, Max, for everything." Max nuzzled her hand, his eyes closing as he let out a contented sigh. And in that moment, Emily knew that his story would live on, not just in the hearts of those he had saved, but in the lives of everyone who heard his tale and felt the unbreakable bond between humans and their loyal companions. Under the vast, starlit sky, Max rested, his journey complete. And though his eyes closed in peaceful slumber, his legacy shone brighter than ever, a beacon of love that would never fade.